Hairclun Publishing presents Swap Club by Lauren Wise. Narrated by Alysa King. Forward. Or, in case you start wondering, disclaimer. This book is fiction. I'm not Val, and I never swung, if that even is the word for the past participle of swinging in a sexual sense. I guess it doesn't matter. My point is, this book is not about me. It's not about my past or present relationships. This book is fiction. The characters in this story are fictitious. Nothing in these pages is based on true events. The lack of resemblance to my own sex life notwithstanding, I have nothing against this lifestyle, or against consensual multi-partner sex, even with other consenting married couples. This book is an escape, something to help you take your mind off everything that's bothering you. So sit back, light some candles, take your clothes off, and enjoy. Lauren Wise. As she spoke, I realized that her validation was through his eyes. She's not dependent on anyone, and yet, her beauty only comes from his lips, her confidence from his arms, her intelligence from his thoughts, her control from his hands. So subtle, almost overlooked. She hates to be alone. She hates to sit at home. When she looks in the mirror, she doesn't see very much, until he stands behind her, whispers in her ear. When he's gone, the music dies, and the reflection feels empty. Why should she depend on him? His words only come on a whim. Who is she? I want to set her free. Anonymous. Prologue. Last night was all a blur. I can't even remember what time we moved to the bedroom, and I barely even drank anything. I remember snippets, fragmented moments when his tongue and lips were between my legs, bringing me to the brink over and over. Every time my body clenched up and I held my breath, he'd intentionally stop. He knew my body, its sweet spots and most sensitive parts, like he'd studied it for a test. It felt like we'd known each other forever. I couldn't believe I'd only just met him when he rang my doorbell at 8:02 p.m. Like an 8mm film, the footage flips through my recall, and I can envision the moment when I sat up on my elbows to prop up my torso so our eyes could connect. If I squeeze my eyes shut, I can feel the sweat on my back again, and the sheets sticking to me. His eyes were a gorgeous icy blue. His hair was dirty blonde and still full. His skin, softer than any I'd ever felt on a man, was practically hairless. So smooth and warm. Good genes. Panic came over me as I glanced at the clock and realized we had only another hour left, and I wasn't sure what to do. I needed to get the beautiful stranger to push me over the edge before he had to get the fuck out of Dodge. I was still new at this. His tongue grazed my swollen clitoris. I pleaded with him to let me orgasm, and I didn't realize how desperate I was until I heard it in my voice. Thank God he smiled as he wiped his mouth and crawled on top of me. When his lips met mine, he tasted of me, and I wasn't completely turned off. In fact, I got more aroused the more he kissed me intensely, unabashedly. I could feel him throbbing against the front of my thigh. All I had to do was bear down on him, and he would glide right into me. He moved his mouth down to kiss my chin, then his lips brushed over my jawbone and traveled the length of my clavicle to my shoulder. He turned his head so that his lips were touching my ear. He asked me what I needed in a flirty whisper. I told him that I needed him inside me, trying to line up my eager part with his rock-hard part, but he kept it just out of reach. He took his mouth away from my ear, down my neck to my chest, where he pressed his tongue to my nipple while gently tugging at my breast with one hand. I couldn't take it anymore. I glanced at the ticking clock. The urgency was palpable. I had an out-of-body experience as I moaned feverishly and literally begged him to have sex with me. My appeal was met with a gluttonous smirk as he flicked my nipple with his tongue. Finally, he looked up held my eyes, and slowly slipped deep inside of me. I reached down and added my hand, a move I never would have made 3 months earlier, when I had yet to see my sex life for what it had been. Boring. It took no more than 4 strokes in tandem with his thrusts before my whole body was convulsing in ecstasy. I was a live wire. My head felt like it weighed 100 pounds as it fell back, and my mouth opened wide as all the air in my lungs evaporated while he kept thrusting. Everything was a blur of motion, sensation, and skin. Time ceased to exist. My post-orgasmic body continued to vibrate with pleasure like a sustained note as he ground into me with more and more intensity until he pulled out, flipped on his back, and came on his stomach. Shortly after the gorgeous stranger went home, while Ryan helped me change our soiled sheets, I couldn't help but pat myself on the back. Every once in a while I had a good idea, and this was one of them. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't please everyone. Take my girlfriend. I think she's the most remarkable woman in the world. That's me. But to my wife... Jackie Mason. Chapter 1. Not Another Tchotchke. An old 70s trend was making its way back into the suburban lives and homes of Montrealers. Husbands and wives were having consensual sex with other married couples and trying to keep the secret under wraps, unsuccessfully. I'd heard rumors about Swap Club on several occasions, and I've learned something about living in Montreal. Rumors in this claustrophobically close-knit village of a city were true about 100% of the time. Plus, the people who called them rumors were, in fact, very likely the same people who were involved. Swapping, swinging, an organized sex agreement, an opportunity to live out deep-seated fantasies and enjoy the anonymity that allows you to truly let go. The mere idea of this was riveting to me. I must warn you, I'm about to divulge some very intimate secrets. Secrets that are not meant to be shared outside of the club. I'm not using my real name. My Jewish mother would die if she knew her daughter had just enjoyed the lewdest year of her life after she hit 40. Of course, the past year has also been filled with all the everyday regular moments too. Time spent as a devoted and attentive mom, exchanging new recipes with friends, although I really don't enjoy cooking. Shopping at Zara with my sister Janet, puttering around the house contentedly. Maybe it's one of my strengths that those simple things aren't mundane to me. But I assume you don't really care about that. What you want to know about is the sex, the swapping. The night I knew I needed more than any ordinary birthday gift for my 40th, I was doing what I did most nights. Lying in bed, snacking on wheat thins, watching mindless reality television. Here, this is for you. Ryan took the box of wheat thins from my hands and replaced it with a gift bag from Holt Renfrew. What's this? I knew exactly what it was as I ripped it open. Your 40th birthday present. Ryan muted the TV, then sat on the bed facing me. He was fidgety and running his hands repeatedly through his hair. I tugged open the bag and removed a smaller box wrapped inside. I had been hinting at a diamond tennis bracelet only for the last 5 birthdays. I didn't even have to open the box. I smiled at Ryan. He got me something I had asked for, something I had coveted for years. Open it, Val. Ryan was excited to see my reaction. I flipped open the top of the box, and there it lay, the sparkling tennis bracelet. I wrapped my arms around Ryan's neck and thanked him. It was beautiful. You like it? Ryan was proud of himself as he fastened it onto my wrist. I stared at the sparkling diamonds adorning my wrist, and I felt like a fucking liar pretending that it was what I wanted. What I actually wanted was something I couldn't show off. I had my heart set on something that could destroy my marriage and my family and alienate me from any friend I had ever known. And I was willing to risk it all. I just needed Ryan to do it with me. When is the right time to tell your husband that you want to join a secret sex club? I decided to wait until after he had his orgasm. We reclined on the bed and kissed for our usual 5-minute interlude, which was followed by the awkward removal of pants and socks. I typically kept my pajama top on, hating what the gravitational effects of maternity had done to my once perky breasts. We got under the sheets, our only barrier against another late-night greeting from one of our children. I tied my hair into a messy bun so it wouldn't get in the way. I needed to wash it. Shit, I'd forgotten to buy shampoo. As Ryan stretched out on his back, I made a mental note to remember to buy it the next day after morning carpool. I started to give Ryan a blowjob, a redundant and tedious feat, but necessary if I wanted him wet enough to glide inside me. The TV was still on. I covertly aligned myself so I could catch just enough of the Kardashian sisters to be entertained while I serviced Ryan. A commercial for Hamburger Helper chippered away in the background. Do people still eat that? As Ryan grabbed the top knot of my bun to better guide my mouth up and down his shaft, I mused about whether I had any ground beef in the freezer. After 7 or 8 solid minutes of giving Ryan head, I was grateful when he turned me over and slid inside me. I glanced over at the clock. 8:54 p.m. If we finished in 6 minutes, I could totally catch The Bachelor. Ryan thrust in and out of me with vigor, his face planted down into the pillow next to my head. I started to wonder, as I glanced back at the bed sheets slipping off our bodies, whether I'd remembered to put the towels in the dryer. I was pretty sure I had. His intensity increased, a sure sign we were almost done. 8:57, looking good. I tilted my pelvis up, and in a matter of seconds, we were finished. 8:54, perfect. After cleaning up, I got back into bed and grabbed the box of Wheat Thins. I adjusted my head on the pillow and caught my TV-strobed reflection in our mirrored closet door. I was startled. There I was, a middle-aged woman with a dirty ponytail in flannel pajamas with a tennis bracelet hanging from the hand that was shoveling crackers in her mouth, in bed, zombie-addicted to impossibly bad television. The reason our sex life had deteriorated was staring me right in the face. I looked over at Ryan, who was checking his email. Was now the time? I didn't know what his reaction was going to be. I was hoping that he would be happy about it. But then I started to wonder. What man wants to share his wife? Shouldn't he be guarding me, protecting me from other men? Isn't that some kind of natural instinct in the animal kingdom? An alpha male wolf is known for chasing away and killing other males who tries to mess with his female. And here I was, hoping that Ryan actually wanted to feed me to the wolves. Sighing, I shook it off, picked up the remote to find The Bachelor, and shifted to get more comfortable. Something was pricking my butt. Reaching around, I pulled out the culprit from under me. The big 40 birthday card was literally giving me a pain in the ass. A couple of days later, after the kids left for school, I was pacing around our bedroom while Ryan was in the shower. I had to bring up the swap club. It was eating away at me, and I couldn't take another minute pretending that I was really just preoccupied with mundane mom chores. Hey, can I talk to you? I pounced the minute the bathroom door opened. I don't remember exactly what I said or the details of our exchange, but I do remember following Ryan around our bedroom as he got ready for work and then into his car as he turned on the engine. Val, I have to get to work. I don't even know what to think. Ryan stared out the windshield as I sat in my pajamas and slippers in the front seat of his car. I don't see what the big deal is, Ryan. He turned the engine off and looked at me with his sweet hazel eyes that I fell in love with years ago. This is what you want? For me to have sex with other women? When I heard the words coming out of his mouth, yes, it seemed crazy. But my mind, my heart, and soul were craving something more. More affection, more attention, more adventure, more sex. But I wasn't ready to end my marriage over it. I remembered the day of our wedding, when I vowed to be with Ryan for the rest of my life. I loved him dearly, and I couldn't imagine life without him. But now, the way I couldn't imagine life without him was more like imagining my life without my favorite pajama bottoms. What I needed to stay in my marriage was to be able to share our sex life with other consenting couples. Fair game. Look, Ryan, I need this, I told him flatly as we sat in the cold driveway. You do realize that we took wedding vows, Valerie? Ryan was clearly disturbed. Yes, we took vows. But this doesn't necessarily conflict with the vows because in the presence of God, our family and friends, I offer you my solemn vow to be your faithful partner. Ryan quoted the vows we said to each other as if I had forgotten. It wasn't that I was sentimental about our wedding or had an incredible memory for speeches. But our 6-year-old daughter Hallie was in the habit of begging us to watch our wedding video over and over while wearing her princess costume. Faithful vow not to have and to screw others from this day forward. Yes, Ryan, I know. But are we really being faithful to each other if we aren't honest with each other about where we're at in our marriage? And honestly, you can't really tell me that you're satisfied with our current sex life. Once a month, if that? Well, no, and you can't really tell me that the idea of being with a different woman after having only been with me for the last 13 years isn't at least a little intriguing? I mean, okay, maybe, but Val, what? I'm not blind. I've seen you look. And that's fine, you're human. I was getting into the groove of my pitch. I don't think those vows meant we should be faithful to each other at the expense of being faithful to us. Lying to ourselves about what we've become. I need more. I know you do too. This isn't exactly a traditional solution, but it's something. We'd be doing something for the betterment of our marriage. And isn't that actually being faithful? Ryan hesitated. Maybe. He couldn't deny some of my logic. But how do you explain this to people? You don't. Ryan, that's the whole thing. We have the chance to explore and help our marriage, and we get to do it in a way that's safe and open between us, but still private. I stared at him silently. I chose my next words carefully. And no, I'm not saying I want you to sleep with other women, although that's what will happen. What I'm saying is that I want us to confront the issues in our marriage. Our sex life, or lack thereof, is as good a place to start as any. We both acknowledge that it needs help. This is a way to do that. It doesn't have to be the only way, but it is a way. An opportunity to remind us that we are human and that we have needs. I slowed down and looked directly at him. Look, we spend most of our time taking care of other people's shit. Our kids, our properties, this house. Let's do something for us. If I told you I had knots in my shoulders and wanted to go for a massage, you'd think nothing of it. Ryan, we have knots in our sex life. Swap Club will help us work them out. Ryan just stared out the windshield that was starting to fog up from our body heat. We sat in silence for a few minutes longer, and then Ryan shook his head. I can't do it, Belle. I'm sorry. Call me old-fashioned. And that was that. The secret of staying young is to live honestly, eat slowly, and lie about your age. Lucille Ball. Chapter 2. 40-0. I remember celebrating my mom's 40th birthday like it was yesterday. It was 1984, I was 10 years old, and my dad had rented out the private party room at Ruby Foo's hotel. He spent weeks on his Commodore 64 designing invitations in the print shop. My mother pleaded with him to just go buy a package of Hallmark fill-in-the-blank invites, but he insisted. Once they were finally printed, neither she nor I, even at the age of 10, could bear to tell him that they were littered with spelling mistakes. Back then, printing one copy took at least 10 minutes. I can still hear the sound of the ink being pressed back and forth onto the perforated paper. Ee-oo, ee-ee-ee. It must have taken days to print all 25 misspelled invites. Come celebrate Carol's 40th birthday. Please RSVP no later than March 18th. Ruby Foo's Hotel. Saturday, March 24, 1984. 7 p.m. sharp. Not gifts, please. Just bring your favorite wine. My father came from the waspiest of the Westmount households. He went to an all-boys private school his whole life and then met my gorgeous wallflower of a mother who had grown up in a traditional Jewish home in Côte-Saint-Luc. All the private schooling in the world, and my father still spells tomorrow with 2 M's and 1 R. My mom introduced him to matzo balls and niches. He introduced her to cocktail onions and crudités. My late maternal grandfather initially hated him. My father was always too formal and uptight for my grandfather's tastes. That is, until my grandfather learned that my dad knew how to make a killer Manhattan. My father attended all their Shabbat dinners in a suit, holding flowers for my grandmother and a jar of maraschino cherries for my grandfather's drink. I think he asked my dad to come for Friday night dinners just so he could make the drinks. The night of my mom's party, an arch of turquoise and silver balloons adorned the mahogany walls of the burgundy-carpeted party room at Ruby Foo's. The round tables were covered with white tablecloths, and plates were adorned with white napkins that had been folded into little ornate boats. Anyone over the age of 55 will tell you that Ruby Foo's attracted an affluent clientele. It was considered to be the go-to venue for weddings, sweet 16s, and in this case, my mother's 40th birthday. It was the 80s. Women were sporting chopped, layered hair and makeup so thickly applied that husbands could barely recognize their wives when they got into bed. Shoulder pads were not just a fashion statement. They were a way of life. My mother used to add shoulder pads to every outfit, even her sweatsuits. Men wore pastel suits over t-shirts, a la Don Johnson. Unfortunately, they looked more like Don Johnson's ugly half-brother than Miami Vice himself. My dad went the other fashion route, the multicolored Cosby sweater. My mom always told him he looked sexy. These days, I'm not sure sexy would be the descriptor used for a Cosby reference. My mom took my little sister Janet and I to get our hair done, which meant French braids and the highest waterfall of bangs one could create from teasing the frontmost section of her hair. I remember getting up from the hairdresser's chair, after being lacquered with Aquanet, and holding my neck stiff for hours so that my hair would stay perfectly in place. In retrospect, I could have stood in a hurricane while a tornado sucked me into its vortex, and I still would have had a perfectly teased hairdo 2 weeks later. Even at 5 years old, Janet was already the star of the show. She was what most people would call the epitome of confidence. I'm serious. I'd describe the 5-year-old Janet the same way I'd describe the now 35-year-old Janet. She had her own style and dressed in whatever she wanted. My mom knew better than to fight with Janet over clothes. This is what my parents referred to as choosing their spot. Arguing with Janet over what she wanted to wear was not a fight my parents had the energy for. Even with her ridiculous outfits, Janet still looked like the kid on the cover of Teen Beat. Always cool. Way cooler than me. The waitstaff wore tuxedos and stood quietly on the sidelines as my family and my parents' friends stuffed their faces with roast beef and burnt-end egg rolls. My aunt read her cheesy poem, which began with the old classic, "Lordy, lordy, look who's 40." I remember listening to my aunt quip about gray hair and Avon ladies selling wrinkle creams, and thinking to myself how old 40 was. But on the bright side, I mused, when you hit 40, you got a big party. Fast forward to 2013. My 40th looked nothing like my mom's. Because of the Christmas holidays, we never celebrated my birthday in December. Typically, it would get acknowledged by February, and I'm pretty sure one year Ryan completely forgot. It wasn't his fault. Ryan just wasn't a big birthday guy. To make matters worse, he was born in July. So his birthdays, in the middle of summer vacation, were always kind of nebulous. Most of the time, my birthday party was ultimately just an excuse to see our friends. To celebrate my 40th, Ryan made reservations at El Taqueria. This was all because I'd mentioned one time on vacation a few years earlier in Cancun that the resort's guacamole was delicious. One time. Ryan has a memory for details. Of course, the guacamole comment was in contrast with all the rest of the food at the resort, which made Ryan either super attentive or completely oblivious. I'm still not sure which. There was also the distinct possibility that he chose this place because it was very easy to get a last-minute reservation in December for a sizable group, and then decided to justify the choice based on the guacamole. I'll never know. I'd mentioned several times in the year, leading up to my 40th, that I didn't want a big party. I didn't want our friends to have to bother with babysitters and gifts and all the hoopla that went along with the invitation. I told him over and over that all I wanted was for the two of us to eat dinner at my favorite Italian restaurant, Bottega. I even left the number on a Post-it note stuck to his wallet. Okay, maybe that's not all I wanted. I was hoping that swap club was still open for discussion. Also, Ryan probably should have checked with me about the scheduling. I was getting my period any second. On the one hand, we were celebrating my birthday in December, which never happened. On the other, I was wavering on a thin line between raging arousal and raging fury. We arrived at the restaurant and waited at the bar for everyone. The decor was a stereotypical take on the authentic-looking Mexican restaurant. Strands of green and red fairy lights were slung from wood beams, oversized sombreros hung on the walls, next to painted wooden maracas and colorful woven Mayan blankets. El Taqueria for my 40th birthday. No misspelled invitations, no catered dinner with tuxedo-clad waiters, and no cheesy birthday poem. Just cheesy. The wooden door blew open and in walked my oldest friend Melissa and her husband Jeff. They stomped the snow off their boots as they entered the restaurant. I could see Melissa as she glanced around at the decor, and I knew she thought that she would rather die than celebrate her 40th here. "Hi! Happy belated birthday, lady!" Melissa hugged me and then whispered in my ear, "Maybe next year we can go to the Mexican Riviera instead of eating Mexican?" Jeff greeted me as Montrealers do, pressing his cheek against each one of mine and making the kissing sound with his lips. The scruff on his cheek made me wince. "Happy birthday, Val," Jeff said, completely oblivious to having given me the equivalent of a chemical peel with his beard, and then shook Ryan's hand. I caressed my cheek, hoping that the prickling sensation wasn't translating into crimson-colored scratch marks. The handsome host greeted us at the bar and asked us to follow him to our booth. His gorgeous, long, silky black hair reflected the greens and reds of the hanging fairy lights as we followed him. I'm not usually attracted to men with long hair, but damn, I would have had to have been dead to not find him attractive. He had full lips, a perfect body, and massive triceps rippling his tight black t-shirt. I enjoyed following his toned frame to our table. "Val, you okay with this booth?" Ryan snapped me out of my preoccupation with our host. "Yep, looks fine. I smiled wide at the host. I couldn't help but wonder. If I couldn't be a member of Swap Club, then would I constantly be on the prowl? I needed a drink. We slid into the brown leather horseshoe booth, where we were able to sit side by side and people watch. Awesome. The host strode back to his podium, causing females at each table to track his movement. The tables were filled with, dare I use the term, lumbersexuals, in tight plaid shirts, with thick beards and perfectly parted Mad Men hairdos, sitting across from hot-looking, tousled-haired girls wearing tight pants, leopard, black, or some variant of the such. A non sequitur. It had recently been pointed out to me that since the 1950s, there has been an inverse relationship between women's pubic hairstyles and men's facial hair. Just something to consider. We were still missing Tanya and Harry and Helen and Steve. Our waiter, who introduced himself as Roberto, came over to take our drink order. I needed some tequila in my system to help with my nerves. I suffer from a classic case of social anxiety that Ryan thinks stems from an awful slumber party Melissa and I had attended when we were in elementary school. I'm not sure. I might just be wired that way. Maybe both. The funny thing is, I have no recollection whose house we were at. I seem to have erased certain parts of this trauma to cope. We had just finished watching the movie Grease 2 with Michelle Pfeiffer. The part I remember vividly was when it was time for bed, we lined our sleeping bags in a row. I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth, and when I came out, all of the sleeping bags were shifted to one side of the room. All of them except for mine. Mine was left by itself, all alone on the opposite side of the basement. "Stop it! You girls are being so mean!" Melissa tried shaming the flock of girls chuckling at me. 10 girls watched and snickered as Melissa and I lifted my sleeping bag off the carpet and moved it closer to theirs. Then, like a drum line, all of them lifted their sleeping bags and moved them away from mine. To this day, I remember crying myself to sleep. Melissa kept whispering for me to stop crying, that I was making things worse, and she was right. The next morning, I woke up with red, swollen eyes that I couldn't hide from my mother when she came to pick me up. "What happened?" she asked as I put my shoes on in the vestibule. I couldn't find it in me to tell her what happened. I was afraid she would think that I was a loser. "Will somebody please tell me what happened?" I sped out of the house and left my mother inside looking for some explanation. It's amazing how one small event could have such an impact. But every time I enter a room full of people, my mind is already calculating all the ways I might be vulnerable. I learned that night about Mean Girls and how debilitating that slumber party would be for me later in life. I had my tools in place should a panic attack arise. Werther's Originals to suck on for dry mouth, and peppermint lip smacker for dry lips. Apparently, peppermint doubles as a sensory distraction. But in this setting, having Ryan on one side of me, Melissa on the other, and tequila in my hand, made me feel safe enough to take some of the edge off. Roberto's humor was pleasant and upbeat, despite the chaotic hustle and bustle, mariachi music, and all surrounding him. Also, his reference to me being a beautiful lady definitely scored him some major flattery points. I was still waiting for Ryan to notice my new low-cut Zara top, miniskirt, and high-knee hooker boots that I bought this afternoon. A direct response to the bad bun, flannel pajama-wearing woman eating wheat thins in bed I had seen in the mirror the other night. As usual, the men started their testosterone-driven, sports-filled banter, and I was left with Melissa to gawk at the young and restless beauties across the way. Sorry, we're late." Helen and Steve swooped into our table like a tornado, her curly blonde hair bouncing around as she did away with her coat like a caped matador about to taunt a raging bull. She almost knocked the man sitting at the next table in the head. Steve grabbed her coat and tucked it over a free chair. Steve had long ago gone fully gray, and yet I was still surprised how much grayer he was from the last time I saw him. He's no George Clooney, but the gray did make him look quite dapper. "Cool place," Steve lied. I can't always see through people, but Steve was too easy. "What are we having? I'm ravenous." Helen sat and thumbed through the menu. "Tacos," I replied flatly. "Where are Tanya and Harry?" Ryan asked me, as if I should know. He was the one that did the inviting. "I don't know. Why don't you call her?" "She's your friend. Just call her." Ryan looked at me like he was making perfect sense. My friend? And this, by the way, was exactly how it was. After 13 years of marriage, we have his friends and my friends. There were no our friends. "So you want me to call my friend and ask her why she is late for my birthday party instead of you calling her and asking?" Ryan took his phone and begrudgingly called, but not before saying, "I don't know what the big deal is for you to call her." Just like I expressed in the car not long ago, I don't know what the big deal is for us to have sex with other people. But, of course, just as he was listening for Tanya to pick up, she turned the corner with Harry. "Hi, awesome place." Liar. "I'm so sorry we're late," Harry apologized. Now, Harry was an anomaly, or rather a glitch in the aging system. His hair seemed to get fuller with age, or what I have come to think of as a proceeding hairline. It actually looked like his eyebrows were soon going to connect with his hairline. Our sitter showed up at 7:30. Harry, Harry, said as he crossed his wrists and shrugged, indicating he was captive to the babysitter. Tanya interjected as the two of them squished in with the rest of us, painting me into a corner with no escape. "I told Flacca 10 times to come at 7, but she insists I said 7:30. Is there any reliable help out there?" Tanya blew kisses at us. "Happy birthday, Val." Tanya was the kind of friend who dropped bags of apples off at our house like clockwork in September after apple picking. The kind who remembered our anniversary and never got mad about canceling a lunch date an hour before. I had a soft spot for her, even with her questionably obtuse disposition. Roberto swung around with a tray filled of umbrella-clad drinks of various colors. He even had the brains to have enough for all of us. "Can I get, mi hermanos some salsa and tortilla chips? Some guacamole?" Ryan took the reins. "Definitely some guacamole for the birthday girl." I could feel my chest tighten. "Why don't we add some beef tacos and chicken fajitas?" I wanted to crawl under the table. Ryan's inability to speak Mexican food was excruciating. "Oh, you have to see this." Helen pulled out her phone to show us something. I was hoping it was some celebrity nipple slip, or maybe even a leaked Oprah and Stedman sex tape. Another consequence of wanting to become a member of a sex club, apparently, was the assumption that everyone else was also fixated on sex. "It's just the most amazing thing. I have to find it." Tanya, Melissa, and I sat and waited while Helen searched on her phone for, hopefully, another picture of Anne Hathaway, Britney Spears, or Lindsay Lohan accidentally exposing her lady bits while getting out of a car. "Maggie sang the most adorable song the other day when she was in the bath." Come again? I took the umbrella out of my Windex blue drink and downed it. My adult party was quickly turning into just another night out with my normal friends. Amazing. Can't wait to see it. I managed through clenched teeth. I looked back at Ryan, who was sipping his emerald drink, his lips turning the same green because he had taken the straw out. That was my sexy husband over there, turning into the Hulk. Minus the full head of hair, muscles, and ability to punch through cement walls. With his penis. Ryan was politely listening to Steve's riveting story about a fence. So I told my neighbor, "If you don't like the fence, then don't fucking look at it.
I mean, how the hell do they expect me to put in a pool without a freaking fence?
Where was Roberto? I needed more Windex. Stat.
Wait, where is it?
Helen was still looking for that video of her kids singing. Shoot me, please. I tried to convince her that she'd already shown it to me, or better yet, to the world. That one you posted on Instagram?
I saw it.
Nope, that did nothing. Helen was still searching.
It's the law, you know. And because the pool is so freaking big, the fence has to be big.
My choices were listening to Steve rant about his fascinating fence, or watch the video of Helen's kid in the bath. Where was Roberto?
Oh, here it is.
With a plastic smile, Helen held the phone to show us. We all looked attentively. Rather, we all looked like we were looking attentively.
You know, it's a safety precaution.
Helen had ears everywhere, even when showing the terrible quality video of her little girl singing off-key.
Yeah, it's a fucking safety precaution.
Steve caught Helen's intervention. Was this how I was spending my 40th? What was going on? Even Ryan must have thought it was horrible. I mean, how does he expect you to swim in your pool without a fence? What a prick. Ryan spoke between sips, oblivious to the green mess happening all over his mouth. He looked like he just ate out a Muppet. Nope, Ryan didn't think my birthday dinner was horrible. I needed Roberto. My dad threw my mother a beautiful party. He sent out invitations, albeit homemade, but he sent out actual invitations to a party with balloons and tablecloths, and here I was at a taco shack with my oblivious friends talking about pool fences. Where was my 40th birthday poem? Oh, hey kids. And just when I thought my birthday couldn't get any worse, Sabrina Weinstein, the most vicious female living in Montreal, was standing at my table. Hi, Sabrina, I muttered as Roberto touched down with my Windex. She was dressed for the Golden Globes. Perfectly curled hair, perfectly flawless skin, and then my eyes zeroed in on the 3 perfectly matching tennis bracelets on her wrist. Oh, we have my friend's 40th tonight. Sabrina motioned towards a table of attractive couples doing tequila shots. At least I wasn't the only sucker celebrating 40 at this small step up from Applebee's cliche of a restaurant. Maybe Ryan was more hip than I gave him credit for. What's your excuse for being dragged to this horrible taco stand, Val? Oh, maybe not. I could have killed her. I wanted to rip the tennis bracelet from my wrist. I wanted to be nothing like Sabrina Weinstein.
It's Val's 40th,
Tanya piped in. 40th? Val? I thought you already turned 40. Oh, no, she didn't. Nope, I turned 40 a couple of days ago. These drinks weren't strong enough. Well, Val, you don't look a day over 39. My brain was already justifying my earlier anxiety and making notes to be more on guard next time, while simultaneously making a case to just stay home. Part of me wanted to call Sabrina a bitch to her face, tell her she should really go fuck herself with her Chanel. But the mariachi band decided at that very moment to march by us with their trumpets, and it was too loud. They were headed right for Sabrina's table. Also, that part of me usually really only wakes up after the moment has passed. My snappy comeback for the obnoxious guy in line at the ATM always comes when I'm 3 blocks away. I had no doubt I would be dreaming up retorts for Sabrina Weinstein in bed that night. Can it get any worse? See you fogies later. And with the flip of her hair, she continued to sashay to her table. One of the mariachi singers dropped a sombrero on Sabrina's friend's head, and the band started singing Happy Birthday in Spanish to her. I downed my Windex and stuck my hand up for Roberto to grab me another. I can't stand her, Melissa confessed. Whatever, she's harmless. I tried to mask my indignation. If I acted like Sabrina bothered me, I felt like it was showing weakness. Yeah, harmless until she's sleeping with Ryan, Tanya spat out. Ryan, who now looked more like the Jolly Green Giant, looked stunned at the notion. Sleeping with Ryan? You think I'm threatened by Sabrina? I had to ask Tanya because Tanya was my call-him-as-she-sees-him kind of friend, and if she thought I was threatened, then I had to put an end to that line of thought. No, seriously, Tanya added. I heard she swings. Now we're talking, Harry excitedly perked up. Swing? Yeah, right. And if that were the case, if Sabrina were fucking Ryan, that would mean I would be fucking her husband. The whole table glanced over at Sabrina's gorgeous husband. Ryan awkwardly shifted, his green mouth